Hi, y'all. So we had the fourth meeting of the Cannabis Study Committee, the Blue Ribbon. Woo-hoo-hoo. I still don't know why it's called Blue Ribbon. I need to figure that out. Anyway, thank you everyone for coming. We decided to dress in blue. The color codes have been fun. And highlights from this meeting. I'm just going to say in the intro what my biggest takeaways were. First of all, I feel like there's a shift going on. I feel like there's education and an openness to education that might not have been there before as far as realizing the value of the flower. The confusing pieces of information that I found were, in general, it is strange to have a medical cannabis program, but it's kind of like survival, right? It's an herb. Generally, American medical doctors don't prescribe herbs, flower. That's not their territory. That's an herbalist. You go to a Chinese herbalist, an American herbalist, a native herbalist, and they have a satchel of herbs for your liver. They have a satchel of herbs for your kidneys. Different herbs can tonify the different areas of your body. And there's ancient wisdom to that. There is meridian points. There's energy channels. There's a lot of other things that these doctors prescribe with. They don't prescribe based on the American science. They prescribe based on energy systems that have been studied for thousands of years. So that's one clarification to note, because you'll see how this conversation came up, and maybe we'll talk about it at the end if you're going to hang around for 2 hours. But you can come back to this video too, and you can comment below, and we can have discussions there. It doesn't have to be just through me. So that was one of the big things that came up when Dr. Elizabeth was speaking, when she said, there is no such thing as medical cannabis. She is prescribed to the medicine that can be studied with science, right? Like dronabinol, I don't even know if I'm saying that right. The marinol might be another one, right? And that actually has studies with contraindications and possible causing of other things. When she was talking about, you'll see a study in Canada, I'm pretty sure it was the synthetic cannabinoids that were studied, not the flower. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that's something to keep in mind, because it's misleading if you think it's the flower. And the moral of my story, or the summary that I'm always going to say, is that flower is the safest way. When she said, I don't believe in anything smoking, any smoking is bad for you, I would say that it could be a way to deliver stuff that can be safe. When I look at the ancient experience of, I think it's called dosa, or there's a way to, that Indian, in India, not native, indigenous people, but in India there's a practice of smoking herbs like damiana and other things to get it into your system. My belief is everything in moderation. We can say it's bad for you, but the other thing that it needs to be cleared up is, well, if it's in moderation, is it bad for you? When we do these studies, are we doing extreme amounts because we want to see what the toxic results are? And what's the difference when you do something in moderation? And let's keep in mind, stress relief is medicine. So if it's done in moderation and it relieves your stress of the day, that can avoid a lot of suffering. Stress is the biggest killer. We know this. The other highlight, I think I was pleasantly surprised, but also realizing there's a bias, of course, when this was said, but I was pleasantly surprised that some history was presented. And I honestly feel like it was because of Angela and Yolanda's testimony in the last meeting, because they were really the first ones to present history, if you look at their testimony. I should really cut that out and have that be a separate video. No one else ever talked about history, and that is so important in putting Humpty Dumpty back together. because this plant was just taken away from us. So she goes into this history of how American presidents have farmed hemp. And I thought it was going in a good direction, and so did Scribbles. And we were like, oh my God, she's actually valuing this. But then she said,
5,000, well, that should be 3,000. 3,000 is the pottery. They found hemp fiber on pottery. For those of you who are classical studies majors, anyone classical studies majors? No? Herodotus noted the use by Scythians and Dacians of smoking a seed or smoking something for euphoric effect. And the first known ban, if you'll see up there, was 1378 in Arabia. And then the next known ban that we know of is 1484 from a pope. And then we jump ahead to 1800s when Napoleon's army invaded Egypt, and alcohol was forbidden, but then they found other intoxicants in Egypt, and they came back, and so General in Napoleon's army said, nope, no cannabis. And so what you see...
But historically, they found it in the ancient places, graves or whatever, I forget what she said, but there have also historically been known bans. Now, I don't know how she found this out, but she went through, she had a chart where she said, okay, it was banned for being an intoxicant here, they banned alcohol, and they did this, all. So I think that's interesting, but because you might say, oh, it was banned for public safety, but back then, it could have been banned to control people. Maybe they weren't doing anything bad, they were just having fun and having joy, and the controlling rulers of the time were like, no, they were enslaved. Like, we want you to be slaves, we don't want you to have fun. So there's that perspective as well, instead of like, oh, this is just a bad thing that all societies have banned, right? And then I think during her talk, it was even Dr. Newman who said, the chairman, well, we might have had medical cannabis when it was initially banned, but we also had bloodletting. So, he clumped that with something that we see as, primitive way that hurts people, with bloodletting. Oh, but cannabis. So I felt a little offended that he clumped cannabis with bloodletting, because the difference is that the AMA was aware of all these different remedies that cannabis was for headaches and all this stuff. It wasn't snake medicine. Actually, that's a whole other topic that I talk about in Hempdemic, like what is snake medicine actually. The snake medicine was actually good. It was actually the copycat snake medicine that was bad. So it's all these copycat remedies that are bad throughout history, like someone copying cannabis, but not the pure cannabis, not the sacred cannabis. This is a very long introduction, and you're welcome to skip it, obviously. But, you might want to get more into the juice of what happened instead of just watching it dry and being shocked and traumatized by the shocking material and possible lies. Get ready to experience that. And the other thing that the Dr. Elizabeth said was that doctors aren't taught this in medical school, so why should they do it now? And I actually think that's a really good point. I think doctors should take continuing education courses in cannabis, because my peers in cannabis, like Scotty Ellison, Yolanda Henderson, Uma, everyone on the web page that I'm working on, all the doctors who are working with cannabis, who have studied the science of it deeply, know more than a lot of the medical doctors who are prescribing it. So it might be good to just require a course, some kind of education, whether it's 10 hours or 40 or 100, someone can at least create that education and that accreditation, so that when you choose your medical cannabis doctor, you know what you're getting into. Okay, this doctor is accredited. This doctor really knows about cannabis. I feel safe with this. Maybe even their ability to get the flower, so important, shouldn't be a moot point. You might want to look at getting herbalism degrees, because there are contraindications. Just like there's contraindications in Western medications, there are contraindications in herbs. And for example, with ginseng, people get it at the gas station for, what. And if you look at the history of that, it was very well used in China after a woman delivers a baby to replenish her system. But if you have what they call hot energy, then you probably don't want to be taking the ginseng because it makes you hotter. So that could mean you have liver issues. So is it worth having that experience if you have liver issues? Can it cause a heart attack? So people aren't wrong when they're like saying, be careful. It's just that in the Western medical philosophies, we generally focus on what pill helps you with this. We don't focus on food and exercise and staying away from toxins like Hippocrates did as the main form of medicine. And how do we fix this? I don't know. I don't know how we fix this. I teach Tai Chi. I'm really into Chinese medicine that is all about relationship and balance. You can see on my Aviva Sings Out channel, I read some readings on that. It is really important for you personally to know if you have liver issues, if you have kidney issues. You need to study yourself. Like, you are your first doctor, and then other people guide you and help you and test you and observe you based on their amazing education, right? So that being said, what happens is, yes, the public comment, there's a couple of minutes that everyone gets to talk, but there's this energy when we speak for just the 2 minutes that it's like squeezed. It's like extracted, literally like a plant extraction. We can't enjoy the spirit of what we have to share. We don't feel seen. We don't feel heard like the other people who get to present for 10 minutes. We feel squished. And so it ends up being rushed and a little bit harder to make our points. And how much education can we really share? So it will be interesting to see what they come up with as far as recommendations for legislation. My hopes, of course, is decriminalization to keep people safe, and also bringing the flower back and not requiring conditions. If the doctor thinks you need something, then let the doctor decide, because new conditions are created every day. That's it. Let's watch this together. I might, cut it off at certain points and for discussion.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for being here this morning. An important couple of topics that we're working hard on. I appreciate the committee's hard work over these previous 3 meetings. Welcome to the 4th meeting of the Blue Ribbon Commission on studying Georgia's medical marijuana and our hemp policies. So there is a legal side of that, and we're going to start off with a bang on some of the legal aspects of this, including how some other jurisdictions may have looked at this. But I want to go on and welcome everyone, and now we'll go on and get started with Legislative Council. If you can just introduce yourself to everyone and your role, and frankly, what role you're speaking under too, because I know you sometimes have to be careful when we all wear multiple hats. But thank you so much for being here and for the work that you've already done and that you're going to share with us.
Okay, good morning. My name is Sarah Crittenden. I am one of the Deputy Legislative Counsels in the Office of Legislative Counsel under the leadership of Betsy Howerton. I am newly assigned to this committee. This is my first committee with y'all, so hey.
So naturally, I ask you to speak in front of us on your first day. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
So my usual role at committees and the usual role of Legislative Counsel is background. We do legislative drafting. I draft bills, draft amendments, draft substitutes. And in the interim, we get to do exciting projects like figure out indexes and figure out what bills passed and how, what we need to fix after if there are any problems. And the inspiration for this little presentation I'm going to give you is from one day I was driving home from work, and I'm driving down 85, and I'm like, what is that smell? On the highway, and a unique smell. And and so I came up with the question, how is that legal? So
Hey, so just a gentle reminder that The CBD hemp flower and pre-rolls are still legal here in Georgia. So that is what you could be smelling. And therefore, it is a public safety issue that cannabis has not been decriminalized, because someone could get pulled over for a perfectly legal product, though they shouldn't be smoking and driving. They might have the smell around them.
We get to do exciting projects like figure out what bills passed and what we need to fix, if there are any problems.
And so HB 496, which is Representative Jasmine Clark's bill, who is also a doctor, her idea is no warrantless searches just from a smell. It's not okay. It's not okay if someone smells like doo-doo. And it's not okay to criminalize someone for smelling like an herb. It makes no sense, especially since it's legal. It makes no sense. It's incense.
Each one down. So when you think about how something is legal, and I've got this, if you can see it, we're going to talk about international policies, which are not binding on the United States, or we'll talk about that, federal and state law, and then the unique role of local ordinances regulating cannabis, and fill in the blank. So that fill in the blank is not an error. It is on purpose, because that's what the main issue is what exactly are we regulating? The cannabis plant, as we'll see, and I think you've probably discovered in the previous meetings, has different roles. And so we've got marijuana, hemp, and I'm going to talk today about THC and CBD. And then what exactly are we prohibiting or permitting, looking at usage, recreational use, medical use, the quantity, or the product.
We've got to decriminalize it ASAP. It doesn't make any sense not to. Or at the very least, decriminalize the smell. Please.
So, cannabis refers to a group of more than 700 plant varieties. For most purposes, cannabis legislatively refers to cannabis sativa. Cannabis is an ancient agricultural crop. It has three main uses: for its fiber, which is to make rope, linens, paper, and they use it for oil; for its therapeutic qualities, meaning it can help reduce chronic pain, it alleviates nausea, controls seizures, and stimulates appetites; and for its intoxicating properties, which is it can be used for relaxation, sensory enhancement, and to experience euphoria. There is archaeological evidence, history here, from 8000 BC, where they have found seeds of a cannabis type of plant. And there's evidence of its use as an intoxicant going back to 3000 BC. So this is just for fun. Several US presidents farmed hemp. This is a depiction of George Washington as a hemp farmer. This is actually a manufactured painting. It's from 2013. Many of our presidents are farmer. Is it still? Okay. Many of our presidents, early presidents, George Washington, James Madison, Thomas Jefferson, grew industrial hemp to be used for rope and coarse linen and to carry things. And it was thought to be a very profitable crop. And then some of our more modern presidents have admitted to the use of cannabis, including the famous or infamous remark from Bill Clinton in the 1990s that he smoked but did not inhale. So, what's cannabis? This is a gross overview of the cannabis plant. The cannabis is a genus of flowering plants. The dried flowers, leaves, stems, and roots can be used for the different products. There are over 120 phytocannabinoids, and we'll talk about this some more later. And the most common one is the delta-9, which is very important. We'll talk about that later. But when we talk about cannabis and the products within the cannabis plant, really well, I did three, but it's really the top two are what we care about. THC, CBD, and something called terpenes, which I didn't know about terpenes until yesterday when I was looking at this. I'm like, what's a terpene? So life is full of learning. So THC is the one we care about the most.
At least for this committee.
Right.
I know there's others who think that the terpenes and the other CBD, the non-intoxicating, but at least for our purposes. Thank you. You're right.
Yes. And you'll see the references to Delta 9. This is the most abundant phytocannabinoid chemical, and it's the one we see in legislation. It's the one that's used in the federal law. There are actually other deltas and other THCs. There's Delta 8 and Delta 10, which those two are probably the most commonly referred to, and that's the one that people get anxious about. There's also, I didn't know this, but there was a Delta 11. There are other THCs, THCA, THCV, THCO, THCP, and those are all manipulations of the chemical compound. There's some CBD, CBC, CBDV, CBG, CBN, and HHC. And so these are biologic, synthetic, and then semi-synthetic. The terpenes, which are interesting, are not cannabinoids. They can be found in any or many plants, and it's what gives us the flavors and scents such as citrus, pine, and licorice. Let's get back. So we'll come back to this definition, marijuana and hemp. Marijuana is any cannabis plant variety with flowers that contains more than 0.3% THC. So marijuana, which has many names, is considered and remains illegal under federal law. Hemp has less than 3% THC and is permissible with some state law restrictions. Marijuana it can make you high. Hemp products are not supposed to make you high, but maybe they do cause you some feelings, some other feelings. And we'll talk about some more of these distinctions. So as I said, this is a very ancient plant. So how does a plant evolve from being a lovely little farm agricultural crop? It evolved. And then how does it evolve? It's treatment from early bans to international prohibitions to now we're coming back on the other side of permitting, and where does the future go from here? So the earliest known ban, which is, okay, so I said 8,000 is what they've got archaeology of the seeds. 5,000, well, that should be 3,000. 3,000 is the pottery. They found hemp fiber on pottery. For those of you who are classical studies major, anyone classical studies majors? No. Herodotus noted the use by Scythians and Dacians of smoking a seed or smoking something for euphoric effect. And the first known ban, if you'll see up there, was 1378 in Arabia. And then the next known ban that we know of is 1484 from a pope. And then we jump ahead to 1800s when Napoleon's army invaded Egypt, and alcohol was forbidden, but then they found other intoxicants in Egypt, and they came back. And so a general in Napoleon's army said, nope, no cannabis. And so what you see, and there's a very interesting series of banning. So in the 1800s, and it's kind of funny to gloss over, all the 1800s and 1900s, but really 1800s and 1900s, you see banning crops, banning the crop entirely, authorizing destruction of fields, penalties.
Okay, so what you could be saying is that there were all these rulers in the past who saw cannabis as getting in the way of having a military or maybe just a compliant people And so taking something away from them that would help them feel free and peaceful would help you with your goals. But what if our goals was to be more peaceful? Then we want to keep the cannabis here, then we don't want to ban it. And how do we know that it wasn't shortly after the banning of cannabis in these civilizations that the civilization didn't die because of it? I mean, they're not here today. I mean, why should we, though, encourage peace and freedom for everyone when you can keep it for yourself as a ruler? So everyone's just enslaved to your personal vision, whatever that may be. Maybe it's building pyramids with hemp herd, or maybe it's conquering some territory somewhere.
Criminalization, lots of banning until, oh, well, what do you know? That's 10 minutes.
Now, you can, if you can
Sure.
pick it up a little bit on some of this. Obviously, some of the medical uses and was back during a time when they also did bloodletting for high blood pressure. So and then the coca leaves, the difference between a plant that's chewed in South America today and then making it into cocaine with some pretty well-known side effects and dangers. There's a range. Something can be fairly harmless at one level, pretty harmful at another level. And so some of the medical and some of the banning and some of the efforts had medical indications. But let us see if we can go on and get up to, we obviously got some international and then some federal law. You've got some great slides, by the way. They're testing my need for glasses or not, but they are excellent. I know if we get to the federal status now, which is kind of understanding what has put us in this current situation to where we have, at least in Georgia, a very carefully regulated, somewhat slow progression to medical cannabis use for medical conditions under medical supervision since 2015 and 2016. We had that 2018 Farm Act, which kind of threw something in there with some largely unregulated medical, non-medical, no medical supervision use. See if you can get us up maybe to the
Federal.
Right, if we can.
Yes. Faster.
I think we have gone over before Haley's Hope Act and how Georgia did expand. And obviously there is a dearth of real medical double-blinded, just like you would expect with normal medications. There's not a lot of that research done that's not either industry supported or something like that because of the federal ban on a Schedule I product. So I think we got the Hope Act and then the Georgia Hemp Farming Act. That's where we tried our initial effort to put some guardrails around it related to the Federal Farm Act, which in 2018, which allowed that very low 0.3% THC hemp.
So internationally, the peak of the ban was 1961. That's when the United Nations came together and made a broad stroke. And then we've been sort of backing down from there. But really, in how the international policies don't affect us, except for it might affect the quantity or quality of products coming into the United States. When we look at federal law, as the chair mentioned, the Farm Bill in 2018 was huge in creating a carve-out. And what that carve-out is, it has to do with the definition of marijuana and what's included or excluded and how that is treated. And I guess what I kind of wanted to talk about today, which I think to me is very interesting, is the federal status now is kind of changing, evolving. So Congress always has the authority to reclassify marijuana, and so does the DEA and the Attorney General. But right now we're sort of waiting. In 2023, the FDA said something, recommended changing, and then both departments said, okay, we need to change the schedule of marijuana. And as late as last year, May 2024, they proposed a rule, and there was going to be a hearing, but that has been stayed. And I think just this month they made an announcement that it's still holding, it's still on hold. What other states have done since the 70s, there's been sort of this backing down, decriminalization / legalization. And as y'all said, there's what Georgia allows is from 2015. Well, there's more. MAP. Sorry, I want to get to the part. To me, that's interesting is local policies and ordinances, which several cities have allowed. But they're not breaking federal law. What they can do is say, all right, now I'm sort of lost, but they can reduce penalties. They can limit law enforcement. And one other, it's prosecutorial direction. Sorry, I was trying to go too big, but we're waiting on the declassification. For now, Georgia law, where Georgia has some wiggle rooms is to figure out what to do with Delta 8 and 10. What to permit and how to permit it. There's different ways you can regulate. Georgia has explored them all with licensing, taxing, fees, limiting percentages. And I believe that's what this committee has explored is the percentage and on consumable hemp products is what y'all are looking at.
Their percentage or most things we dose in medical care are milligrams, and not necessarily the percentage that's in a particular dosage form. But that's correct. We're looking at.
Yeah. Well, I know I went over time. I threw a bunch of stuff together. I think y'all have talked about a lot of things, but there is a lot of information out there. I did look at Arkansas just had something, and Florida has had something about consumable hemp products, and there was a ruling in June on the Arkansas bill that was
And my understanding from that, and this is where you can help us, I believe, is that there was a question of whether a state can regulate something that has been declared legal at the federal level, and whether a state could in fact ban a product that the federal government has said is legal. In the same way there were dry counties, there may have been dry states for all I know, even though prohibition was over, some counties and jurisdictions still didn't allow it. And there was never a requirement just because the federal law didn't prohibit it or allowed it, that it didn't require every jurisdiction to allow it. Is that what the Arkansas decision you think essentially did with hemp products, or at least intoxicating hemp products?
Right, the Delta, yes, that's what happened in Arkansas.
And I don't know, I know you're not in the science world, and maybe somebody, another one of our speakers can answer this, but you mentioned Delta 8 and 10. Are those are present in the plant or the flower naturally, but they can also be created synthetically. Is that true?
Correct.
And that maybe one of the next or other speakers can tell us just briefly about that, because whether we should stick with regulating and allowing to a degree on the hemp side of our committee, Delta 9 and an intoxicating component in adult beverages, for example, or if they're synthetic. Those other two can be natural, but they can also be made synthetically. And that's one of the concerns, I think.
And what I understand is Delta 8 and 10 are not prevalent, or it's not prevalent naturally. And so they're more common synthetically, is what I understand.
And it may be used to get around a Delta 9 limit but to synthesize one of those in a larger amount,
Right.
even though it's only 20 or 40% as intoxicating, if you can, I don't know, chemically alter it, it would be different. Is that kind of your understanding?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Let me just see if there's any, I know you have some detailed slides, and I appreciate your 3 or 4 pages of your bibliography as well, so that we are certainly trying to be a data-based system, even though there are some judgment calls that require political judgment. Let me see if we do have some committee members that, Representative Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that presentation. A lot of information. That's great. I'm trying to get my head around the concept of 3% of the THC content relative to the concept of the milligrams. So is there a way, is there like a formula that translates that, or do we know how many milligrams are in the of THC are in the drops that we already approved? I believe it was Haley's Act. So can anybody answer that?
We have a 5% limit and 20 ounces, which I believe we've done the math, and somebody could personally have 28,000 milligrams of, it's legal to possess in Georgia if you have a Department of Public Health card. So it's really a pretty,
So 28, excuse me.
fairly generous amount, but it's difficult for some of the other delivery methods, medically in particular. For vaping, you can't put 20 ounces in one of those. So there's a little question about that.
Okay.
Go ahead, maybe somebody ask. Catherine.
I was just going to be available to provide an answer. And that is that it can be estimated. It's just a matter of doing the math and creating charts. But yeah, it's not insurmountable making those calculations. We've done it at the department a couple of times to try to calculate about how intoxicating we think certain products would be if they were made of different materials and that kind of thing.
Representative Fry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Follow up. So do we know what the milligrams of a dose of the oil, like one dose? We know they can carry 28,000. So what is one dose at 5%? What's the milligrams of that? Do we know?
So the Department of Agriculture does not oversee the medical cannabis program. So I would
The physicians I've talked with who have patients on this, it is a very, I would say, somewhat challenging. Some of them have said 2 drops that are, especially like if you're giving it to a child or someone's caregiver, 2 drops about the size of a grain of rice 3 times a day. And then some people have said something about the size of a black-eyed pea twice a day. So I don't know the specific milligrams. It's since we don't write an actual prescription for it, it's been a little challenging. It's one of the reasons we'd like some additional delivery systems. Is the oil? It was a good start in 2015, but I think we want to look at some of the delivery systems.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your slides and our ability to look at these. It helped a lot with your what's in a name and the and some of the understanding of it. We will keep moving forward. Thank you for your help. All right, we're going to go now to Dr. McCord. If you can come up and introduce yourself and your current role that you're speaking in.
Sure. I have slides.
We'll get those up there.
Thank you. Oh, let's. Okay, can everyone hear me? Well, thank you so much for having me here. So my name is I'm Elizabeth McCord. So I am a physician who's dually trained in internal medicine, psychiatry. I did a fellowship in addiction psychiatry. I'm one of probably 20 people in the country who have these credentials. I practice at an Atlanta-based academic institution. I am the director of an inpatient addiction consult service at an academic institution. I also am an internal medicine hospitalist at a safety net hospital in Atlanta, and I'm here to talk to you about cannabis.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I will say I appreciate so much everyone in the room who wants to know more, who is advocating for Georgians, who wants to help Georgians, right? I took an oath over 10 years ago to help patients, and y'all took an oath. It looks a little different, but the point of the matter is we all want to help people, and we want to do that safely. So I have never prescribed or recommended cannabis to my patients. I have prescribed FDA-approved medications that have THC in them for FDA-approved reasons, right? So I have cancer patients who use a product called dronabinol, which is FDA-approved, and that helps with nausea, vomiting. I have patients with AIDS, and I prescribe dronabinol for them as well, or other THC products. But I do not recommend cannabis. I have no conflicts of interest here as I stand before you, and my views are expressed here are my own. So my opinions are my own and don't necessarily reflect my employer. So I guess the question is, who is the expert in the room?
Ooh, I know. I'm so glad you asked this question, because on one of these clipboards, I have prepared that analysis. Yes. Here it is. 10 questions to figure out who is the biggest expert in the room on cannabis. Are you ready? I want you to keep score and comment below on what your score is. You just get a point for each yes answer. Are you ready? Number 1, have any of you gone to cannabis college? Or at least taken continuing education courses in cannabis? No, I know someone who has a master's. I know someone who actually owns a cannabis college here in Georgia. Number 2, have any of you grown cannabis? This is essential. Experience. That gets you to know the plant. That gets you to be an expert, right? Number 3, have any of you seen it growing? I saw it growing. I get a point for that. That really does affect your knowledge about cannabis. Number 4, have any of you watched one instructional or informative video online about growing cannabis or its molecular makeup? If you've done your own research, even though if you didn't go to college, you still get a point. Okay? Studying dronabinol and marinol does not count. Number 5, do any of you have an interest in using industrial hemp products like building materials, fuel, and fiber? Because if you have an interest, that kind of makes you an expert, because you're interested in something, right? It helps you to have a receptor for the information. If you don't have a receptor for the information, how can you be informed? Number 6, have any of you tried hemp seeds or hemp protein powder? So have you taken part of the experience of this hemp plant? For example, you might be judging me if you don't know me at all, but have you ever met me for lunch or had a conversation with me or actually, connected with the human and not the idea of me? Number 7, have any of you consumed cannabis? If you have consumed cannabis, you know a little bit more about it than someone who has not. Keep that in mind, right? Like the Neil deGrasse quote, you might know enough to think you're right, but not enough to know you're wrong. Number 8, have any of you used cannabis to recover from an illness or emotional stress? That brings it to a new level. So you might think to yourself, oh, I just used it recreationally or for experience. But what if you actually used it as recovery? That makes you more of an expert. Number 9, have any of you sold cannabis or invested in a company that did? That just makes you more invested to know about it, doesn't it? Number 10, final question. Have any of you taken money from lobbyists who do not want cannabis to be fully available, free, or legal for the people? Aviva, that is not a question that makes you more of an expert. You're right. So the most you can get is 9, but you need to subtract 1 point if you answer yes to 10. Let me know in the comments below. Now, whoever gets the most points is the biggest expert in the room. So Dr. Elizabeth, I don't know what you're about to say, but based on this, you need to compare yourself to the other answers and of the people that were in the room to see if you were the biggest expert. And even if you weren't there, I want to know your answer. I want to talk to some experts. I want to know stuff that I don't know. Maybe a 10th point, well, not officially, hypothetically, is, are you open to learning new things, and are you open to possibly not knowing everything about it when you think you know everything about it, right? Because we're all learning. I'm so excited about how there's so much more to learn about it. Are you even interested in learning about it? Are you excited about it? Okay, fine, you get a bonus point for that. All right.
I've been on the news about cannabis. That was really fun. I published peer-reviewed papers in the Journal of Addiction Medicine on medical cannabis and helping providers on guidelines of how we can kind of navigate this system and medical cannabis programs in the country. I also mentor in California. I work for an institution out there, an academic institution where I teach and mentor rural providers in California. So I also see a different landscape. California's landscape of cannabis is much different than Georgia's. I have been published online and in articles like in the Psychiatric Times about medical cannabis programs, about medical cannabis in general, and how medicine and cannabis is not a medicine. I have treated hundreds of patients with cannabis use disorder in my clinic. I've spoken to thousands of providers who have been, impacted, where their patients are impacted by cannabis. I've hung out with people who are very vocal about cannabis use. We have a good time. I know a lot of my patients, a lot of people in this room may use cannabis.
Okay, I just added it up. I got a 6.
And I'm here today to talk about the role of low THC oil in Georgia. So originally it was for compassionate care for individuals with severe terminal illness. Now the bill, SB 220, is proposing to raise the limit of THC, the psychoactive component of cannabis, to 50%, to expand to other forms, so past just flower, to like vaping, gummies, and sodas, like other injectable forms that can be predatory towards children. I've seen THC, products that look like Skittles and other kinds of candy, and to remove requirements for end-stage disease. So I'm here to talk about why I think I have concerns about these changes that this bill will make for the medical cannabis program in Georgia. So cannabis is not medicine. The word medical cannabis is really misleading. In fact, we know that to put the word medical in front of cannabis when we don't have great evidence that there's actually any benefit for cannabis is actually, we're seeing a trend in younger individuals. We are seeing in the families that these young kids are seeing their parents take medical cannabis, and then they're associating cannabis with medicine. And doctors prescribe medicine. Medicine is meant to help. And so that word in and of itself can be misleading because it's not a medicine.
I mean, it wouldn't be an issue if it wasn't a sugar addiction in the first place.
What is like when we think of medicine, we think of, just like Chairman Newton said, that we have FDA approved indications that have gone through rigorous trials. We've had, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It gets into your pharmacies. Your doctor prescribes a certain dose. We know that if you go past that dose, harms will come to you. And we have those warnings on, if you've ever gotten a prescription and then it says you can suffer all these things, and it's pretty much like everything you could ever suffer. It kind of makes you a little bit worried about all the medicines we take. But the difference between medical cannabis and approved medications, like the medicine that I prescribe for my patients with cancer, is that there are state qualifying conditions that haven't been put through these rigorous trials. So these qualifying conditions are made by individuals in this room. And some of these qualifying conditions don't have, or most, or not all, don't have the evidence to support their use as medicine. So this is kind of a quiz. In 1969, what was the THC content of pot? Well, if you went to Woodstock and you got a joint from your friend, how much THC was in that pot? You got it, 1 to 3%, 1 to 3%. You go to a head shop in California, which is where I practice, not clinically, but where I teach, because we don't have them in Georgia. What is the flower THC concentration?
34% Pitbull.
You got a good dealer. What head shop are you going to? It's about 20 to 25%. You can get up to 30. It depends on which state. 30%.
My main point is that we have an opportunity here in Georgia to either raise the THC limit on hemp or introduce recreational cannabis with low THC flower, because that is the one thing that is so safe. All of these issues that we're having is with the vapes, everything else, not the safe flower.
Thank you
And
for
there's
being here.
nowhere in the world.
No.
There's nowhere in the world that has the 1%, 5%.
Thank you. Thank you for,
From 1969, we have modified our cannabis flower, just flower, now it's 30%. This committee is talking about increasing the THC oil to 50%. Let's talk about medically. Oh, and I will say vaping. How much THC concentration is in a vaping pen for cannabis?
60.
You get about 94%. You got it. You can go up to 100%. If that's 100% of THC in these vaping pens.
Can I ask a question?
Please, Chairman.
Just like heroin's not a medicine, but opioids, if you've just had, femur surgery, they come in pretty handy. So
Yes.
there is a medical side of it, and I agree with that part of it. But isn't the real issue on a medical side is if THC is your concern or the active ingredient,
Mhm.
wouldn't aren't the milligrams, whether you get it by drinking an entire bottle of something or you get it in a gummy, the real or a capsule that's from a medical provider, aren't the milligrams the real issue? So if I told you to take 2 dropperfuls of your oil, that would be far more than 2 or 3 hits or whatever you call it, inhalations of a vape pen. Isn't it really the milligrams? And if somebody tells you you can use a half a dropper full, or you can use 2 deep breaths on a aerosol device,
Mhm.
Isn't the real issue how many milligrams are you getting, not whether an asthma inhaler has 94% active ingredient or isn't that really what we want to concentrate on from a medical point of view?
So thank you, Chairman. That's a great question. I want to highlight the relationship between percentage and milligram. So if you have a substance that is 100 milligrams and 1 milligram of that pie, like we say you have a pie that's 100 milligrams, tiny pie. It's really more like a mandarin. And 1 milligram in it is THC. That's 1%. So it is, if a substance is 100 milligrams and you have 94 milligrams of it is THC, that's 94%. So that is a great question. The way that we correlate this, so for like products that we prescribe, for like dronabinol, and I'm using that medicine because I'm very familiar with it, it is like 2.5 milligrams, 5 milligrams, 10 milligrams. 10 milligrams can get you a little buzzed. Most medical cannabis programs, and I'm going to be talking about this later, but I think it's important to say here now, is most medical cannabis programs do recommend about 30 to 40 milligrams per day. If we do change the cannabis laws, the way that SB 220 is written, to 2 ounces of 50%, that's about 945 milligrams a day you could take if you give them that much volume that they're allowed to have per 30 days. Did I clarify that? The standard, what we have now, the 5% oil, 4 drops is 10 milligrams.
Okay.
If you changed it to the 50%, then there's obviously like volumes and things, but that could get up to over 900 milligrams, depending on small drops, because in that drop, the percentage of it is more THC. And the other products in that sample are other things, like we've mentioned, other cannabinoids, CBD, CBD is non-psychoactive, terpenes and other things. Did I clarify that?
Yes, thank you. And once again, this is medical we're talking about, right? In particular, you're talking about milligrams percent. That's really to adjust our medical program. You're not talking about
Yes, sir.
the hemp products.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, Ms. Russell. Sorry, we're going to interrupt a little bit with.
So no, and I
although we
want to make
are
sure
a
I'm
little
being
close on
thoughtful of our
time.
time too.
There.
So just quickly, you were mentioning dronabinol. Is that how you
Yes,
pronounce it?
Dronabinol, yes, ma'am.
And you were explaining that there's a 2 and 2.5 milligram
Mhm.
dose. But what is the ingredient?
THC.
It's okay. Is it directly derived from a plant? Is it synthetically manufactured? In which, when you say THC, which one? Just so we can.
Absolutely, Delta 9.
Okay, so it's D9 from a
It is a synthetic D9, but it's
synthetic
THC.
D9.
Mhm.
Do we know? Okay.
It's produced to replicate Delta 9, which is the psychoactive Delta THC product that you would have in marijuana leaf.
Sure. Or
Okay.
is that synthetic? Is it where are they making it from? I'm just curious.
I don't know the specifics. It's a great question.
Okay.
It is likely it means derived from the cannabis
Okay.
plant, and it's identical to what we would see in a
I
cannabis.
think that's kind of what I was just wondering is
Yeah.
does it interact with the body in the same way that naturally occurring
Absolutely.
D9 is? Have there been studies about that?
Dronabinol has been studied for decades, and we have great safety data on Dronabinol.
Okay.
And those amounts were proven safe for 18 and older individuals. It's only FDA approved for 18 and older.
Thank you. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Just because if we were making those comparisons, I wanted to make
It's a
sure
great
that
question.
they were the same. And then also if it's okay in Dronabinol, but it's not okay in it sounds like it's just quantity.
Yeah, it's quantity. I'm not against cannabis. What I worry about is that if we change some of the policies, I worry about the safety for the patients. I know what dose is safe, and I know how to prescribe that dose that's safe. The changes that we would make for a medical cannabis program, I do not believe and will not be safe. It's not rare. It's a predictable outcome.
Who is the most qualified in the room to talk about cannabis? That's just even easier to assess than who's an expert. Yeah. Who has watched and or participated in more than 5 hearings on cannabis at the Capitol? I think you get an extra point for that. So I get a 7.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead.
You're okay.
Go ahead and let me let you finish your presentation. I'll hold the question.
Tell me to,
And
stand
Yeah,
down if I'm going
5
over my
minutes.
time. So toxicity of high amounts of THC in the body, we know that it can cause heart arrhythmias, atrial fibrillation, which is an abnormal heart rhythm, lung inflammation if used through an inhalation, like a smoked form, heart attacks. Actually, cannabis does increase plaques in the heart vessels, and pancreatitis, which is inflammation of the pancreas. There are some great studies out there. This one's actually from Canada. Canada's had legal cannabis since 2018 that showed that when they legalized cannabis, now this is not medical, but they did this at the same, Canada did the same time. They did medical and recreational at the same time. It increased deaths, 3 times increased risk of death, almost 10 times risk of suicide, traumas, almost 5 times increase in traumas, and opiate poisonings. Almost 5 times greater risk, and even lung cancer. And this was higher than other substances, like alcohol, stimulants, and opiates. So I won't belabor too much of these facts, but I think these are really important, right? So we are seeing that about 35% of individuals who use cannabis have an addiction. It's an addictive substance. That's why it's federally scheduled 1, because it has an addictive property. We see increases in car crashes doubling after legalization. So increasing that just amount of THC is going to increase car crashes. 25% of workers in legalized states admit to working high. There's increased business insurance premiums for states that have less restrictive cannabis rules. The impact on the developing brain can't be ignored. So the brain develops until about 26 years old. You're kind of, a sponge, like mushy peas, until you're 26. That's why we do really reckless things when we're young. We have impaired attention issues with cannabis when it's exposed to a young brain under 26. Impaired judgment, brain volume loss, and a potential permanent 8-point IQ loss for individuals if they're using at a young age. I'm talking like 12 to 17 actually, but every year we study like how many people are using cannabis, and every year from the ages of 12 to 17 there are 1.2 million individuals in that age bracket who start smoking cannabis. 1.2 million children age 12. I see patients down to about 14 and they're smoking cannabis. This is a passion of mine as a psychiatrist. Up to 50% of individuals who experience one cannabis-induced psychotic episode develop a lifelong psychotic disorder. I have seen this in my practice. It develops a schizophrenia, essentially, a schizophrenia parallel psychotic disorder. And daily high potency use has a 5 times higher risk of psychosis. This is studied. And what is high potency? What is the THC percentage of high potency in like educational papers that are peer reviewed is 10%. Question? I see it. Okay. D9. We do not study D8. Yeah. Absolutely. That's a great question. These studies are done on Delta 9 products, synthetic products, which Dr. Raduka will talk about, synthetic hemp products. He'll be talking after me about those. There's not good evidence. It's not there. I look for it all the time. I follow this really closely. Scarce evidence for depressive disorders, anxiety disorders, but these are the qualifying conditions that Georgia has accepted. Very low quality evidence that it helps with anxiety. Actually, CBD, which is non-psychoactive, has better properties for things like anxiety, insomnia. The psychoactive part, the THC, doesn't. And a lot of individuals, especially in California where I teach, talk about their patients using cannabis for pain. It actually doesn't improve the functional outcomes of pain. A lot of my patients say, I just wish I could, my older patients, I just wish I could go to my granddaughter's graduation because I'm so immobile, I'm such in pain, I can't do it. And unfortunately, those functional outcomes are not realized with cannabis. There's just the subjective symptoms, like you can manage it better, but you actually can't do it better. So I have some quick proposals that I'd like the committee to consider about how we can make this safe for Georgians. Retain or cap the THC potency to 10 or less. 5 would be ideal, but we've come together to talk about what would be the biggest or the best kind of number. And when I think of this number, I think of the studies show high potency is 10 and above. And so if we stayed 10 or below, I think we'd be in a safer range. And remember, I just spoke about this earlier, but just want to reiterate, the bill is saying you can have 2-ounce supply with a 50% THC. That means 1 ounce of it is THC. That's 28,000 milligrams of THC. If you give that to somebody for over 30 days, they could take 945 milligrams per day, while most states are recommending 35 to 40 milligrams per day. So Georgia is not on the right side of history there with their cannabis laws if we do this. We recommend limiting the possession and supply quantities to a max of 1/4 of an ounce per month rather than 2 ounces. And that would give you actually, if we stayed at 5%, that would be a 3-month supply if it was just 1/4 of an ounce. Restricting product forms, restricting the ability to take it into your body via vaping or smokable forms or youth appealing edible products. Some of these products look like Skittles, like I said, Skittles and Nerd Rope, and really appealing towards a young population. Doctors, and I've published on this, we don't know how to do this. We don't know how to do prescription. Does that mean to go, or I'm actually not? Cool. I only need 1 more minute. We don't know how to prescribe this. We did not learn this in medical school. We did not learn this in my fellowship. We did not learn this in my 2 residencies.
Hey man, I think that's really great to admit that you did not learn about it in medical school. That is spot on. Did they even teach about the endocannabinoid system? I don't know. Do they teach about herbalism? Because cannabis is an herb that herbalists should be able to prescribe. It's just another herb in the garden, right? Let's face it, they don't teach it in medical school. So isn't it an option though to go to cannabis college if you are a doctor, or to get continuing credits? And do we want to require that? I don't know. I mean, any doctor can study anything. You can study yoga, you can study Tai Chi, acupuncture. I know there are some people who cross over, and anything is possible. You just have to seek out that education and advertise. If you are a medical doctor that wants to be able to prescribe cannabis, advertise that you've studied it more, that you're an expert. Mm-hmm.
We don't know how to safely do this, and I worry that it's going to be in the hands of providers who are not prepared and don't have the evidence to back up the changes that the changes that Georgia will be making. We would like more warnings on psychosis and other dependencies, like the risk of dependency, 35% addiction risk. Increasing the age to THC to 18 or older. Right now it's 0. Babies and toddlers can have medical cannabis with THC. And maintaining end-stage illness priorities and conditions. Tightening advertising standards, less about marketing and capitalization, less about the money and more about the healthcare. And making sure that we are following the data and annual reporting of individuals who are using medical cannabis and prescribing it.
Sure, there's probably some kind of training in doctors being able to prescribe dronabinol and marinol. Keep that. Keep the isolates. Keep the isolates in the medical community. That's what pharmaceuticals are, right? Extractions and formulations and chemical and synthetic creations. So just give the simple folks back the full plant. You can put these chemicals together and call it an entourage effect, or you can leave nature as God intended it. For example, we can have brown sugar, which is the sugar that has been blown apart, refined sugar and molasses, and then put back together again, brown sugar, which you might still feel like something's missing because you can just start over from the beginning and not blow them apart at all. And then you didn't have any chemically altering and no glue to glue it back together, right? So before the sugar was separated out, I think some people call it sucanut. That's what it is as its own. And some people say you digest it better. So why blow it apart to begin with if you're going to put it back together? That doesn't make any sense. How would you feel if it was you? It doesn't sound very fun to me. This is directed to Representative Spencer Fry. Think about building a house. If it was one big piece of stone, wouldn't that be stronger than a bunch of pieces that are mortared together? You know, the joints are the weak spots in the houses, right? If something is requiring glue to stick it back together, that's a weak point in the chemical makeup. Doesn't sound like it's as good.
So in closing, thank you so much for all the hard work you do for Georgians on behalf of myself and those who are in support of keeping the low THC oil. And I really appreciate everything that y'all do. I just think we should remain with compassion and evidence-based care that protects Georgians.
Thank you for your presentation. We do have a couple of questions, including one on one of our members is on Zoom. Representative Williams, do we have you there, sir?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Please, yes, sir.
Yes,
Go right ahead.
A question pertaining to the testimony of the doctor. Will our testimony be made available? I found some of the percentages very interesting, and I would like to get a chance to read over what has been said, particularly pertaining to the percentages that have been found.
Yes, sir. I've provided a handout that's available to all. Graham has it. And it has all of the data that I shared with you today. And thank you for your interest.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Chairman Dickey.
Mr. Chairman, just want to ask your opinion. I just got through dealing with my elderly parents living in retirement, assisted living type facility. They were in their 90s, and so everyone in that facility were either in their 80s or 90s with multiple type of medical conditions, from severe to pretty good. Do you see any danger in allowing citizens above a certain age to have access to medical marijuana in a setting like that? Say a 90-year-old needing to have end of life conditions before they have access to this product, or just, I think that product would be a benefit to some of those people in that facility.
Thank you for your question. And oh, sir, did I interrupt? I will say that THC medical cannabis programs were initially started for compassionate care. I am not advocating to remove any of the policy, and I do think there's a role even for an older generation. But to safely do that, we need to make sure that we are looking at how the body metabolizes medications and safely adjusting the doses. I don't think there is any one person who it doesn't fit for. I think in the sense that it could be possible to use small amounts of THC for certain indications that are FDA approved. And that can be for an older population in a retirement community. And so I would say that there may be a role if it's safely dosed. I do not think there's a role for a 90-year-old individual to be able to get 900 milligrams a day of THC, but potentially 2.5 milligrams a day. Maybe that compassionate care again. I don't want us to lose sight of the reason why we are all here and why this exists.
Thank you. So again, reasonable dosage limits as opposed to a volume or, I mean, your goal is a dosage limit.
Yes, sir.
Right. Ms. Russell.
A theoretical question.
Yes.
If I'm going to try to say it right, dronabinol.
Dronabinol, you're doing great.
If it were offered in an inhalable form, would you be opposed to that?
I don't think smoking anything is good for you.
What if it were if there were a vaporizer type option, like medical grade vaporizer, I'm just trying to kind of find the distinction.
I appreciate that. We have seen over the last couple of years, and I didn't mention this, a concept, a medical condition called EVALI. It's e-vaping associated lung injury. And you're seeing people who are needing lung transplants from vaporized substances, whether that be nicotine or cannabis. Our lungs I would not support vaping, as I do not support vaping cannabis in a recreational form either, because of the concern on the lung. I think orally, we know how it metabolizes and how the body takes it in. And that delivery system, to me, does not add a great benefit, though I will say the studies do show that people who are using medical cannabis are more likely to want to vape because sometimes they can't tolerate, taking in oral substances. So I empathize with that, but it's not my medical practice to recommend.
And dronabinol is in pill form?
It's a pill. It's a capsule. Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Dunn.
Thank you, Dr. McCord. A couple things. In Georgia, we're really not considered a legal medical cannabis state. We're considered one of the THC oil, and I think it's 14 of us, in addition to the 34 or so that have full-blown medical cannabis. We've heard over the years a lot of testimony about all of the bad things about use of marijuana. And from my perspective, most of that I'm hearing come from recreational or adult use. We put in our law in Georgia many safeguards for the patients that doctors recommend this product for. How many of your cases that you've referred to involving children or other people and the bad effects come from patients that are actually using medical cannabis versus adult use?
My patients, the ones that I see in my addiction clinic, are using recreational cannabis. And obviously, it is not legal in this state. But my concern obviously is with being medical, like saying it is a medical cannabis, but the milligram of how high that is. The reason why my patients have issues with addiction is because it is a dose dependent relationship. So the high potency recreational use, I believe that if we made these changes, I would see that same, I would see my patients or people come in to see me who would have been in a medical cannabis program and now have addiction and now have these toxicity concerns and now have these health concerns. Did I answer your question?
Sure.
Okay.
One further question. Talking about children using, I fully empathize and agree with you. There's a certain age that has an effect on the patient. But under our law, there's a set number of conditions that a doctor has to recommend the product for. As a doctor, I would assume that you would agree that doctors have the best interest of patients involved, and before recommending a patient card to a child, they would have to have pretty substantial reason to do that, knowing that under 18 people disagree with whether or not somebody should be using. My feeling is if we're going to have a medical cannabis law in the state, we ought to trust doctors more.
You'd be okay with the under 18 being limited to the seizures? That was one of the goals of the original plan. Or are you just worried about the other conditions, whether it's lupus or ulcerative colitis? I don't know if it's diagnosed under 18 that often, but
Mr. Chairman, may I finish?
go ahead. Sorry.
So
Please.
we have met a number of patients over the years, been following this for 10 years or more now. A lot of the children I see that have the parent has a caregiver card and the child has a patient card are children that have severe autism primarily, that will be children that will probably never be functioning citizens because of their condition. And, from that perspective, that any adverse conditions is not going to really change that child's health, so to say. And most of the children we've run into that have use of this product, it has made them go from being self-destructive to being well-adjusted young children that are able to go back and participate in whatever level of educational schooling they can, and also have a happier life and a more productive family situation. Would you feel comfortable if a doctor prescribes medical cannabis for such a child, regardless of age?
Thank you for your question. I would say there's a couple of things I want to clarify. CBD, which is cannabidiol, which is a bioactive cannabinoid, is FDA approved for seizures in epilepsy for young children, in a specific type of epilepsy. CBD is separate from THC. There is no evidence for THC in any indication for young individuals. There's no evidence to support its use in autism. There's no evidence. That's all. There's nothing that science hasn't caught up with that hypothesis that the families have. And therefore, I won't be recommending medical cannabis to a young individual under 18 because there's no FDA approved indications. It's not been studied, and we don't study on children, right? That's unethical, right? We have to be ethically responsible. So we're not studying, on these developing brains. But I can't recommend medical cannabis for a young child because there's no indication. We don't know the safety concerns. And if it's too much THC, we know the risks. We know the risk of psychosis. We know the risks of developing a primary psychotic disorder. We know the risks of other, on the brain. So in my medical opinion, I would not recommend it.
Follow up on that. We have one incident, and I'm sure there are others, where children have arrested brain development or split brains. It's not a seizure issue. It's something more severe than that. That the family has got to buy. They have to buy illegal street weed and cook it in the kitchen to get to a substance strong enough to help that child. And in my opinion, the way our law is today, we're making criminals out of a lot of our citizens that need a higher concentration of this product. And I think it's important for us not to make our citizens criminals because they need this for whatever condition. And these are not, a cold or sore throat. These are significant conditions. And I really think all of the negative information we're hearing is coming from statistics from adult use rather than qualified information from medical cannabis programs. Thank you for your testimony today.
Thank you, Mr. Dunn. And you raised some great points on the goal of the program, which was compassionate use. And there's going to be a lack of evidence for a while unless the federal government changes. And in the meantime, those parents are they've seen real results, I believe is what you're describing. And thank you for that. Representative Frye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the information. I just have a question on the statistics. Do you study the alcohol use along with the cannabis use when you have a patient? You're saying like 50% of them could develop issues in the future. They're addicted to cannabis. Would you say that those folks may have a predisposition to addictive chemicals or whatever you want to call them, and that potentially alcohol is involved as well, and where there's no real causal analysis of whether it's the THC that's causing these issues? Just speak to that. Like, how do you view that?
Yeah. So addiction is a brain disorder, a brain disease, and it's inheritable in about 50% of cases. In other cases, it's related to potential adverse childhood events and then other indications in childhood and other reasons, trauma. I will say that for a long time, cannabis was thought of as like a gateway drug. Like if you started and then you kind of switch over to other drugs, that's actually been proven not to be true. If you have an addiction to one substance, you're more likely to have an addiction to another substance, but not because of the individual substance on the other, if that makes sense. So opioid use disorder doesn't make you, doesn't intentionally make you more likely to use cannabis. But the idea that you have an addiction makes you more likely to develop an addiction in another substance.
Right. Thank you for
That clarifies. Okay.
And you did say that, follow up, Mr. Chair, brief. You did say that 50% of your patients that you're seeing develop future psychosis issues. Is that correct?
No, sir. It's if you have had one episode of cannabis-induced psychotic disorder, you have a 50% chance of developing a primary psychotic disorder. It's not 50% of my patients or 50% of the individuals of my patients who use cannabis. Okay. It's if you've had that psychotic episode, you are at a higher risk. Okay. Some people will smoke cannabis every day for their lives and never become psychotic. And then others, for reasons that are related to genetics and epigenetics, will.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, for answering our questions. I appreciate your work in this and look forward to moving forward. Dr. Raduka, you could come up. We are tight on time, so if you can, we'll give you a little card at about 8 minutes, if you don't mind.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for committee members. Really appreciate the opportunity to present to you and appreciate all the very hard work that you're doing on these very complex subjects on behalf of the welfare of Georgia's adults and children. I'm Dr. Gregg Raduka. My doctorate is in human development from the University of Maryland. I'm an international certified prevention specialist and helped create some of the prevention standards for certification in the state of Georgia. My 51-year career has been around substance abuse prevention and treatment, and helped establish the Adolescent Chemical Dependence Program at Ridgeview Institute in Marietta. So I'm here today as a volunteer for Georgians for Responsible Marijuana Policy, which is a statewide organization with hundreds of individual members around the state who are very interested in responsible cannabis policy. So I'm speaking today on hemp products, and thank Dr. McCord very much for her speaking to medical cannabis. So I've got a couple of recommendations policy-wise. And the first recommendation involves intoxicating cannabinoids in hemp consumables. And
I left for a second and I saw this happening outside, so I'm going to let you take a break from this as well.
The whole point is Google gave out these licenses, and then there's kind of this misconception some golden ticket and whatever, and it's actually the program is so bad that 4 years later, only half of us had even opened, and we're really doing the legwork.
And it's regional, isn't it?
No, it's the full state.
It's full state.
But I guess the problem is there's no delivery, and you have to go to the dispensary. So the majority of the dispensaries are around Metro Atlanta, which is unfortunate to people all over the other state. Like we opened one in Athens last year, and until then people there had been driving 2 hours one way, so 4 hours, and you're talking about people with cancer, people dying. We're gonna have to go 4 hours to get medicine.
Great, thanks. All right, doctor, let me get you real quick.
Thank you, sir.
Cannabis at the same level. So to go to a 2.5 milligram dose, it's not going to hit for a lot of people. Now, I have a patient right now that has stage 4 cancer. He's 47 years old, he's married, he's having problems sleeping, cannabis can help that. He's having problems with his pain, cannabis can help with that. Not directly, but indirectly. The physician talked about the fact that, it doesn't take away the ability for the person to actually experience all the pain, but that's not true. It takes away their impression, and that's what narcotics do. The source of the pain does not go away, but the impression that the patient has, it goes away.
The Department of Agriculture has been hard at work with regulating Delta-9 THC and hemp consumables. The problem is that their enforcement is restricted by the fact that only one kind of THC is regulated right now via SB 494, which passed a couple of years ago. If you will look at the bottom of the first page of my written testimony, it contains the text from a label of gummies that I bought, ironically enough, in Woodstock, Georgia. And it says so much in 4 lines. It really is the gist of the entire issue that I believe we're dealing with regarding hemp consumables. So if you look at those last 3 lines in particular, the Trip Dip Twisted Gummies contain D8, D9, D11, PHC, THCP, which is initial preliminary research shows is at least 5 times as strong as Delta-9 THC, THD, THCB, THCX. But the label is also very specific in pointing out that this product is in compliance with Section 10113 of the 2018 U.S. Farm Bill and contains less than 0.3% Delta-9. And I've looked at a number of gummy bottles, other products. They have that same disclaimer about Delta-9, while at the same time advertising all the other cannabinoids that are intoxicating in a very appealing way to the customer. And we'll get into the certificate of analysis that's on these bottles in a minute. But the vast majority of products can contain concentrations that are up to 95% and unlimited number of milligrams at the same time, again, because only Delta-9 is regulated right now in the state of Georgia, not these other THC variations. And that's not to say anything yet about other intoxicating cannabinoids like HHC. The picture gets a little more complex. THC is not the only intoxicating cannabinoid in marijuana, in hemp products. And you were correct before in that the hemp plant contains a lot of CBD, but only trace amounts of Delta-8, Delta-10. So in order to get the Delta-8 and Delta-10 up to speed in a gummy product, for example, they have to be synthetically produced. And that brings in a lot of problems about chemical solvents and other issues related to the purity of the product that the customer is buying. So as the graphic below shows, and as Director Russell stated at the July hearing, the hemp-derived cannabinoid picture is extremely complex. And I'm looking at this diagram on the second page of my written testimony. And as you can see, it really reflects the language that's on the gummies bottle, because on the left of that diagram, you'll see the less than 3% Delta-9, while at the same time having all these other in isomers of THC and other intoxicating cannabinoids in the hemp product. And all of that is completely legal because of this flaw in the 2018 Farm Bill. So given the above complexity to establish and regulate and enforce suggested maximum weights and volumes regarding serving sizes, it's almost seems to me an almost impossible task because of that complexity. So recommendation 1 is 23 states have sought to ban or restrict intoxicating cannabinoids in hemp consumables. So Georgia should allow only non-intoxicating cannabinoids in hemp consumables such as CBD and CBG, cannabigerol. And both CBD and cannabigerol, they're not psychoactive, they're not addictive, but they have been shown to relieve anxiety, to relieve pain, inflammation, digestion issues, and so forth. So they're valuable cannabinoids in cannabis, in the hemp plant, that can be used to benefit the customer.
Is it just me, or does it seem like he's really not enjoying talking about anything valuable about the cannabis plant? And by the way, again, we're talking about taking it apart. He's just talking about these isolated things. And nobody has mentioned in all 4 study committees that CBGA is the precursor to everything, to CBG, to THCA. Oh, I learned it from Scotty Ellison. He should speak with a PowerPoint to these legislators.
So the second recommendation regards the complexity of the hemp products and certificate of analyses. The certificate of analyses, you may know, is mandated by law to show what the ingredients are in hemp products. And so picture is further complicated by the fact that current law does not specify, this product is legal, this product is legal, this product is legal, as is the case with medical cannabis, where you have 5 different products that have been specified by the law. In Georgia, a product is legal as long as you can consume it by one of the 3 methods that are listed in the law. And those 3 methods are inhalation, absorption, and ingestion. And as long as they, except for gummies, are not a food product and contain alcohol. So, in other words, if a product meets the above criteria and it's not prohibited, then it's legal. So, for example, vapes are legal right now in Georgia, and vapes don't have any minimum weight or volume specifications yet, and I hope those will be coming out in the rules. Right to date, only 4 hemp consumable products, gummies, beverages, topical applications, and tinctures, have maximum weights and volumes. So, and again, because the Department of Agriculture's hands are kind of tied by SB 94, all those maximum weights and volumes only pertain to one type of THC, Delta 9. SB 494 mandated the total THC weight be included on the certificate of analysis. That did get changed by the rules to include the weight of Delta 9 THC. I would hope that the committee might recommend that the certificate of analysis might contain the total THC weight and really the total weight of intoxicating cannabinoids, because as Mr. Chairman, as you observed, milligrams is the bottom line here. So right now, the consumer really doesn't have any idea how much total THC is in a hemp consumable, much less other intoxicating cannabinoids such as HHC. So the certificate of analysis, which can be seen by the consumer, it's usually in a QR code format. And so the consumer scans that QR code and brings up the COA on their phone, for example. So in Appendix 2, which is, I think, page 6 of my testimony, page 4, you will see a typical COA, which looks like this. That's pretty complex. Our committee was trying to go through this the other day. So can you imagine a consumer bringing up this COA on their phone before they try to purchase a hemp product and trying to understand what they're purchasing? So I think there's got to be a lot of work done on trying to simplify COAs and make them available in a format that can be understandable. Lastly, included in my testimony is a chart of 7 states. And these states are all states that have either banned or restricted intoxicating cannabinoids in hemp products. You can see in just 2 of the states, there are 9 or more states whose ban or restrictions have been upheld in federal court when they've been sued by the hemp industry. A lot of these regulations these laws and regulations are extremely important and very, very helpful for the committee to take a look at as examples. I remember Chairman Dickey saying in a hearing how valuable it would be to have the contents of legislation from other states that has to do with the restriction or ban. And so here are 7 states that are really exemplary in what they've been able to perform, and a couple of examples of how the courts have upheld their ban or restrictions.
Go ahead and wrap. We'll need you to wrap it up, if you will.
Okay. So you may have heard that Texas did veto the legislation that the Texas legislature had passed in June of this year, Senate Bill 3, to do just what I was saying earlier, to include only CBD and CBG in hemp products. And Governor Abbott gave us his rationale for his veto of what the legislature had passed, that the Arkansas law that was signed into law by Governor Sanders would not be upheld by the court. And so there was no use in him signing Texas's bill because the court would never uphold the Arkansas bill. Well, the next day, following his veto of the Texas bill, the federal court upheld the Arkansas law. So I think many in Texas are very interested in seeing this kind of legislation passed, again, where only CBG and CBD are the cannabinoids that are permitted in hemp consumables.
Thank you for your testimony and your table of some other states. I know some of those do have recreational marijuana that's taxed, and they restrict hemp because of it. But that was a good clarification, repeat, really, reminding us of how Arkansas's law was upheld. They were looking, I think, in particular at synthetic cannabinoids, I believe, weren't they?
Yes.
Mr. Dunn.
Thank you, Dr. Raduka, for your comments today. Those of us who have been following this have heard you many times and appreciate your dedication and what you do. Couple of questions. The gummies you held up, where did you buy those, perhaps?
This is in Woodstock, Georgia.
What kind of, was it a dispensary? Was it a gas station or
shop?
A vape shop? I think all of us understand the movement across the country of the synthetics and hemp being controlled more or eliminated in some respects, as well as the current farm bill going through the U.S. Congress. Both versions in the House and Senate contain language that would eliminate the things that you care about. Also, Senate Bill 33, Dr. Kirkpatrick, I believe, does the same thing. With the dysfunction going on in Washington right now, my assumption is that our legislative friends will probably take action on that bill quicker than the federal government will pass it. But I think a lot of those concerns are going to be taken care of in the coming legislative session or on the federal level to start with. Personally, I have a lot of friends in the CBD business, and right now I think their main product is beverages. So what is your opinion about CBD and consumable beverage?
Well, I think as long as the hemp product is limited to non-intoxicating cannabinoids like the 2 I've mentioned, then the product becomes less important. I agree with Dr. McCord that that vaping can be particularly dangerous for the consumer. But beverages, I don't see an issue if the cannabinoids are non-intoxicating.
Thank you very much.
And I would just say, I hope that you're right about the federal picture, but it has been 7 years since the Farm Bill passed. And once again, amendments to the Farm Bill, which have made progress through Congress, have not passed yet in the form, as I'm sure you know.
Yes, sir. We actually worked on the 2014 Farm Bill that should have passed in 2010. So I'm well aware of the lengthy process and get a Farm Bill passed.
Okay.
Thank you, and Dr. Raduka, thank you for your testimony and for the handout that you gave us.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and start with our public comment section. I know there may be some who have commented before, and certainly free to keep it short. We're going to start with Ms. Lowe, Corey Lowe, and on deck after that is Aviva, so we can go on and be ready to go, so we can transition fairly quickly. And go ahead and just introduce yourself and begin.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here, and thank you for this opportunity. Thank you guys for your work on here, and thank you, Mr. Dunn, especially for speaking up for children with autism. And that's actually where this all began. I know they keep saying compassion care, but however, it was with the seizure kids. Allen Peak, we started in 2013. I'm Corey Lowe, I'm a mother of a child with seizures. I'm also the executive director of Peachtree Normal, but more importantly, I'm a mother before anything else. And my daughter is nonverbal. We started when she was actually 12, and they told us we needed to plan for my daughter's funeral. She would not live long. She would pass away at adolescence. And that's kind of when we connected with Allen Peak and the other seizure parents. And so at age 12 is when she actually started cannabis oil. And praise God, she's 24 now. She's still here. She was born 9/11/01. And we're all from Atlanta. So the lady from California is speaking. It's kind of frustrating because I was born at Crawford Long. My mother was born at Crawford Long. We're all here. We're born here. We pay our taxes here. We work here. Both of my parents have stage 4 cancer. My father has pancreatic. We worked with the union, pretty much built Atlanta, Local 72. My mother, born and raised, in Atlanta, she has stage 4 cancer, bone cancer, where the cancer has eaten her shoulder bone and her arm is hanging. So she's taken 4 30-milligram oxy and a fentanyl patch. And I say all that to say that it's not touching her pain. We need whole plant, full plant medicine for people who are from Georgia, who are born here, who've worked here, who've been working on the backs of building this city, building this state, the farmers who are in South Georgia, the veterans. And she was talking about inhaling. We have, I don't think she knows because she doesn't have a child with seizures, but I do because I watched my daughter had 3 seizures yesterday. And we have a rescue nasal cannabis spray, high THC. Thank God that we have in Georgia because it stopped her seizure on a dime. And she had 3 drop seizures. So she goes from standing to falling on her face. So you have to be present every moment. And the medicine is why we still have her today. And that's why my parents are still here today, because my dad was given 2 months to live. My mom, she's still here 3 years later with stage 4 bone cancer. And it's because of the whole plant, full plant medicine that this lady keeps saying. And I just want to encourage you guys, maybe if you want to look back to old testimonies, because we had doctors testify in 2014 and so on and so on. Thank you again for your time. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. Aviva, and then Tom Bauer after that. Ms. Aviva, come on up.
Hi, Chairman and committee. Thank you so much for having me. I just wanted to start with a question, a rhetorical question. What is the difference between AI and humans? You might say humans bathe. You might say they have a spirit. You might say they eat. You might say they enjoy the sunlight. You might say they have relationship. Same question is, what's the difference between plants and synthetic cannabinoids? The actual botany, the actual alive plant also gets sunshine, also perhaps has a spirit, some herbalists would believe, and they can have a relationship with us. Some say that just a relationship with a living plant gives you the medicine, the plant medicine. Mom, I don't think they're listening to this hippy dippy and Babylon scribbles. That was really rude, but I have a very relatable point. Okay. I mean, haven't you all, maybe not now, but you probably watch TV and growing up, you see those commercials where they're like, okay, try Lexicon. It have a summer breeze effect, but it might give you a leg syndrome and edema and a heart attack, and you might die. If so, call the doctor if you have a sudden bout of diarrhea. But can you imagine cannabis flower? Oh my God, the commercials would be so cool. It'd be like, do you want cannabis for MS? You might have a side effect of suddenly craving a Twinkie and enjoying every single bite immensely, and a healthy craving for intimacy, and you might feel one with nature. Wouldn't that be so cool, you guys? To have that, and not the synthetic cannabinoids that Dr. Elizabeth was talking about, because she had some good talk points. You don't have to call it medical cannabis. Cannabis is medicine, like Hippocrates said, all food is medicine. Are you done? Yes, I'm sorry. Well, thank you, Scribbles. I really appreciate that. And I just want to close by saying it is a very confusing issue, and I really appreciate all of you taking so much time with us today. Thank you so much. Oh, and I met a doctor in the hallway who was too late to sign up for public testimony. He's an actual medical doctor. And it would be great if we made time for him to speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you both. Tom Bauer. And then Dave. After that.
I guess I'll have
Ahead, Tom. We got a little
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
30-second warning, and then
I was wondering what the colors were. The yellow's 30 and the red is
been a
5.
minute. You got 30 seconds left at that time.
Okay. I'm Tom Bauer with the Leading Age Georgia. We're the association that supports nonprofit and mission-driven housing and service providers for seniors. We also represent the spectrum of care, everything from home health, adult day centers. Medical cannabis issues are of interest to seniors for a variety of reasons, including that medical cannabis helps alleviate agitation, anxiety, restlessness, and sleeplessness common among older adults with Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. So, Chairman Dickey, thank you for bringing that up. I'm subbing for Jenny Helms, but we can get you plenty of research on that as well. We'd like to make 2 specific recommendations. First, homebound residents of local long-term care facilities, including ours, who are certified to receive medical cannabis can't travel to dispensaries, and they need medical cannabis delivered to them like their other medications are. Thus, they need to be able to designate a caretaker, whether it be a friend or a family member or even the facility, to be able to do that too. And secondly, and this probably gets back to the first testimony today, Georgia rules and laws need to, pertaining to long-term care facilities, need to kind of be checked to make sure that they accommodate medical cannabis, because we do have laws for prescriptions and the distribution and storage at these facilities, but this is not exactly a prescription. So that's something we need to take a look at as well. And I'll be happy to leave this with you. So it's got
Thank you, sir. That'd be helpful. I appreciate it. And that is an area where I hope we can make some progress as studies continue on how we can help our seniors. Dave Raduka, and then Kathy Winholt McDade after that. Dave.
Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I wish I'd had a chance to present, because what I've heard over this being the 4th meeting I've attended, is someone had said there's statistics, there's lies and damn lies. We've heard all of that with a very small amount of truth weaved in there. So anybody on the commission that would like to have a real understanding of what we're talking about and get away from the kind of misdirection that we're being led down, there's real benefits to the plant. The doctor said that. They didn't like using a word in front of it, but they said there's benefits, okay? They said they're compassionate, but they're not compassionate if you're over an age or under an age, right? That doesn't fly. That's not right. That's not part of the hypocritical oath. The only reason they can get away with that is because the federal government has not allowed this drug to be, or this plant to be studied. So if we keep saying and keep doing this, as our first presenter got up here and said, you'll be messing around with bad legislation for another 8,000 years, okay? If that's what you're after, then God bless you all, and go down the path of not addressing what the people of Georgia want. Statistics from or reports from the AJC say it's over 70% without bringing environmental issues or the personal rights issues into it, just the adult and the medical side, over 80%. When we bring the environmental side of this thing, it takes it past 100. I'm talking about the people who elect you, other than Mr. Dunn, the people who elect you. You're here to do the justice for us, the people, by going down these other roads and not writing real cannabis legislation, as I talk about and as suggested. Whole plant, full plant legalization, and address this as one piece of legislation. You will be doing the same thing for 8,000 more years. I don't think that's what you really want. So please consider reaching out to me if you have any questions about this plant and would really like to understand it, or you'd like to know more about the Georgia Cannabis Freedom Act that I authored and how it can really bring the benefits of over $10 billion to this economy, including hundreds of thousands of long-term trades jobs. Okay, we just closed paper mills, multiple paper mills. Those people are out of work, out of business. If we allowed for this plant as a renewable resource, those people would be working. Those are your constituents. So please consider real sensible cannabis legislation that addresses whole plant, full plant, so our farmers are satisfied, our medical patients are satisfied, the doctors can get around this when the government finally changes the rules. But realistically, the changes that are coming in the federal farm bill are going to push it back to the states. So again, if you're good for 8,000 more years of doing the same thing, my hat's off to you, because that's what you're setting yourself up for. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Wendholt McDade, and then Thomas Winstonley. Go ahead.
Thank you for allowing me to speak before you today. My name is Kathy Wendholt McDade, and I'm the president of the board of directors for Georgians for Responsible Marijuana Policy. Thank you for allowing me to come today. I would first like to respect Dr. McCord's expertise and experience in the room, if you don't mind. I am a citizen of Georgia. I am not a scientist, but I am a mom and a soon-to-be grandma. And first, let me recognize the validity of all the presenters who have come before this committee over the 4 hearings that you've had. With medical marijuana, there are certainly cases to be made on many situations. Some of them are very, very compelling. Everyone has the right to search for appropriate health remedies. And with Georgia's new hemp regulations, businesses absolutely have the right to sell products approved through state law. I come here today to implore the committee to think seriously about the full implications of its decisions regarding both of these issues. Georgia's government was founded upon the will of the people and is instituted solely for the good of the whole. I am here to speak for the whole of the people. You, as leaders of our government, are responsible for ensuring that these decisions apply to the whole of our residents. That means giving our youth the opportunity to grow up to be the best that they can be without unnecessary barriers in the process. So please consider that Delta 8 loophole. I also want to just remind you that in 2024 of March, the state attorneys general, including Georgia's Attorney General Chris Carr, warned Congress that unregulated intoxicating hemp products are endangering public health, especially youth, and urged federal action to close loopholes allowing the cannabis equivalent products in states that have not legalized marijuana. Please keep Georgia in mind when you're doing that. I will not say the rest of my thoughts, but thank you for your time.
Thank you for your work. And Mr. Thomas Winstanley, and then Alan Hart after that.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much, Chairman, for having me and for the General Assembly here.
My name is Thomas Winstanley. I actually moved here from Massachusetts. I'm a reluctant Southerner and a Yankee in Reformation here. I joined Edible Brands, which you probably know better through Edible Arrangements, to help build their edibles.com platform. And I've had the privilege of listening to these hearings since the summertime. And I want to set some clear boundaries around some of the discussion that I have heard. The folks who are more prohibitionist in view of hemp, we as part of the industry actually share more of the same views on the category than is probably acknowledged. We do not want these products in the hands of children. We do not want things that are abusive in terms of the federal policy. We want very smart regulations, not just here in Georgia, but at the federal level. And you all don't get enough credit for the policies that you have introduced thus far in Georgia. When I go and I speak to staffers across the federal government, and I meet with executive branches of the government, I point back to Georgia as a thoughtful framework: ingestible products, milligram caps, 21 plus verifications, licensing. Georgia has been a model in a very complex and convoluted category. And I think it's very dangerous when we hear these discussions. When we hear the word intoxicating, let's not forget one beverage of 5 milligrams. I do not consider intoxicating in the same way I do not consider one glass of wine or one beer intoxicating. It's responsible use and overconsumption that becomes intoxicating. The same case can be made for things like coffee, aspirin. And I think Georgia continues to build and be one of the leaders in this category. And I appreciate all the work you all have done, and I don't think you get enough credit. And the most important part of the entire program, as I see it, is enforcement. The enforcement numbers have been astounding. And you guys have been 1 year in, and every time I've heard Commissioner Harper speak about the enforcement numbers, they go up. They're taken seriously. And what we don't want are the things that people who are prohibitionists are concerned about. We do not want unregulated products. There is a Chinese supply chain providing synthetic products. But you know what happens when you introduce prohibition and you walk back some of these guidelines? You open the door for that inflow of these products to proliferate. Prohibition does not repeal demand. It pushes demand into unsavory channels. And I think Georgia has had one of the most pragmatic programs in the country, and it has served continually for the consumers of this state.
Please try to wrap it up if you don't mind. We are trying to.
So I didn't see the card go up, so
okay, sorry.
But I just want to spend, I moved here in June of 2024. And I've been incredibly proud to be a member of this state, to be a part of a program like this, where all eyes are watching. And I hope not just here in Georgia, we continue the fight, but I hope you also bring the fight up at the federal level, because a repeal of this provision in the Farm Act is going to have much more adverse consequences because of the engagement we've received from consumers. Thank you all so much. And hopefully at some point I can share a little bit more about what we're doing. Cheers.
Thank you and welcome. Alan Hart and then Aaron Jimenez. We do have a warning at 1 minute and then the final.
Honorable members of the Georgia Legislature, distinguished colleagues, and fellow citizens, my name is Alan Hart. I am the owner of Classic Sativa, an education-based hemp retail store with 2 locations in Athens, Georgia. We provide a safe environment to help consumers understand federally legal cannabis. I stand before you today not as an industry insider, but as a concerned parent and a believer in personal liberty. We are here to talk about hemp, a plant often misunderstood, and we are here to talk about safety, and in doing so, we must also confront a failed policy that has cost Georgia taxpayers and harmed our communities for decades. The so-called war on drugs. For too long, our approach to cannabis has been based on fear and an erosion of free will, rather than on fact and personal responsibility. The result has been a policy disaster. The war on drugs has not made our streets safer. It has disproportionately incarcerated our citizens, particularly people of color, and wasted billions of dollars on enforcement while the availability of illicit drugs has only intensified. This approach fundamentally rejects the idea of free will, treating adults as individuals capable of making their own decisions, but as subjects, not treating people, but as subjects who must be protected from themselves. The hemp plant has been unjustly swept up in this century-long war, despite its low THC content, industrial utility, and therapeutic applications. We have failed to distinguish between a crop with boundless economic potential and illicit substances, punishing farmers and entrepreneurs instead of empowering them. Georgia has made progress, but recent legislative moves show we are still tempted to retreat into prohibition. A more sensible approach is to lean into the concept of personal liberty, trusting our citizens to make informed decisions about safe, regulated hemp products as a far more effective strategy than criminalizing consumer choice. The real answer to consumer safety lies not in prohibition, but in responsible regulation. We can create a framework that includes independent third-party lab testing, strict labeling standards, and market safeguards that protect children, all while allowing adults to exercise their free will. This approach supports a growing industry and respects individual liberty rather than relying on the failed, heavy-handed tactics of the past. I ask that we shift our thinking from criminalization to empowerment. Let us create a framework that allows adults to make their own decisions about their health and wellness while ensuring strict standards that protect against harm. This is the path forward, one that honors our state's values, empowers our citizens, and leaves behind the failed policies of a bygone era.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Ms. Jimenez, and then after that, Ms. Angela Holland after this.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Get a little yellow card after your 1 minute, and then.
Okay. So I am here. I've attended all of these meetings. The one I didn't attend, I watched from home and gave entirely too much feedback to my TV. So I am happy to be back. I just think that there are certain regulations that can go into place based on the concerns I've heard that I think everyone would pretty much be happy with. The first and most pressing is taking hemp out of gas stations. I have not seen many people from gas stations coming here to say that their livelihood depends on having hemp in the gas station.
Somebody today.
Maybe, but the people that I mainly see here talking about their livelihoods being at stake are Georgians like Alan, who employs Georgians, and jobs would be lost if he was no longer able to operate his business. I also want to note that Alan drove from Watkinsville, Georgia, because I rode with him. He did not fly in from Florida or another state. Just something to note. I also think that hemp and medical marijuana must learn to coexist peacefully in this state. The reason being because of the economic impact I've already said. What we're talking about here is federally legal cannabis, hemp, and federally illegal cannabis, medical marijuana. That being said, until the Supreme Court rules on gun rights, I think that there are a lot of Georgians that no matter how accessible the medical program is, are not going to be comfortable putting their name down on a registry for that. So we must live symbiotically. I have other proposals that I would love to speak with you about one-on-one. I can definitely be available after this. Thank you so much.
Certainly we're agreeable if you have some that you want us to make copies for the members, if you have it in a writing form.
I can email. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Angela Holland, if you can introduce yourself and who you're with.
Good afternoon, members of the committee, Mr. Chairman. I'm Angela Holland. I serve as the president of the Georgia Association of Convenience Stores. We represent about 2,000 of the 7,000 stores in our state. We have multi-generational operators as well as corporate companies. I have a full written testimony. It took me about 4 minutes, 22 seconds to get through that. So I now have about 45 seconds left. I will send this written testimony. We have really two major points. The first one is that we are a fan of the way the department has gone through, made the rules and regs. We're very happy with the distribution and the tiered system that they have set up. We'd like to see it remain that way. One of my members testified, or actually did a presentation on a national platform a couple of weeks ago, and said that the reason they chose Georgia first was because the regulations were comprehensive and concise. And so thank you for your work. Thank the commissioner. And the other part that we would like to weigh in on it, because I'm assuming this will come out, would be the taxation and how that affects our border stores. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Taxation. Okay. So, and how it affects the borders. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for your testimony today. By the way, thank your members. About a year ago, a hurricane went through a large part of the state, and I know your members were a crucial part of helping Georgians get by when things seemed difficult. So please, of those 2,000 Georgia-based stores, tell them thank you for us.
Thank you. I will.
Kelly Long, and then Mary Adams after that, and then Christopher Trammell. If you can just introduce yourself and then
Thank you, Chairman Newton, and thank you, panel members. Appreciate everything that you guys are doing, as has been stated. My name is Gary Long. I'm the CEO of Botanical Sciences, so one of the 6 license holders for medical cannabis in the state of Georgia. And I'm very appreciative of all the perspectives that have been shared, not just today, but in the other sessions. What I want to just, give you information so that you can make sense of it is, we've been in operation now for about 2 years as a company and dispensing products around the state. The average demographic of the patient who comes to see us today is a 52-year-old female with comorbidities. Those are, diseases that are on the state's list. So we're following obviously every step of the Georgia law. And so when we hear the testimony of others, and I have great sympathy for people that have addiction problems, I think the issues are conflated, right? Many of what you have heard and what we do see out in the world today is you've got people that are abusing drugs. You can abuse alcohol, as we've heard. You can abuse almost anything. I know many people that have messed up their lives taking prescription medicines prescribed by a doctor. So I would just like to leave the committee with that testimony, that if you look at what we do and how we serve the patients of the state of Georgia, it's done in a very responsible way. I do believe these issues need to be looked at collectively, because many people out in the marketplace today think that hemp sold in a gas station is equivalent to the products that we sell in a highly regulated environment to folks that come into the dispensary with a card. So we appreciate the work that you're doing. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me directly. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Adams, and then Mr. Trammell after that.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. It's lovely to see everyone again. The first thing I'd like to say is I'd like to remind everybody that Haley, who Haley's Hope bill was enacted for, actually currently lives in Colorado because she can't get the medicine she needs here. Sorry. I brought 2 veterans to speak at previous meetings. They only were allowed 1 minute at a time. So I asked one of them to write a letter, and I'd like to read that to you now. This is the testimony of First Sergeant Retired Dominic Williamson, U.S. Army. My name is Dominic Williamson, and I am a retired U.S. Army First Sergeant with 20 years of combat service to this nation. Throughout my military career, I led soldiers through some of the toughest environments imaginable, but nothing prepared me for the battle I faced when I returned home. Like so many of my brothers and sisters in arms, I came home carrying both visible and invisible wounds. Chronic pain, sleepless nights, anxiety, and depression became part of my life. And upon retiring, I was prescribed over 30 medications, including multiple narcotics, just to help me function. What those medications did was numb me. They dulled my pain, but they dulled my purpose, my focus, and my ability to truly live my life. I wasn't healing, I was just surviving. And all of that changed when my psychologist recommended medical cannabis. I approached it with caution, but also with hope. And with proper guidance and supervision, I began treatment. That single decision transformed my life. Today, I am off 28 of those medications, including every narcotic I once depended on. My clarity, energy, and emotional balance have returned. I am more present for my family, effective in my community, and at more peace with myself. This experience has showed me what I deeply believe. Medical cannabis is not about getting high. It is about getting healed. It is about giving veterans a safer and more natural option when pharmaceuticals have failed them. It's about restoring dignity and function and hope to those who have already sacrificed so much. As a retired first sergeant, I spent my career fighting for my soldiers, and now I fight for them in a different way by advocating for fair access to medical cannabis for veterans across the country. We need to put policies in place that put healing above stigma and compassion and politics and fear. Every veteran deserves the chance to reclaim their life, and just as he did, and medical cannabis has given him that chance. He says he will continue to speak out as every chance he gets on behalf of all the veterans that he knows, hoping that his words will help you guys find a way to create an opportunity for peace, for balance and healing for all of the Georgia veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Trammell.
Good afternoon and thank you. My name is Christopher Hunter Trammell. I am managing member of CHT HC9 LLC. I have rented, defended, and published my thesis while a student at the University of Mississippi, the only institution in, I think, the world at this point that receives all of our tax dollars to do research on this. So I'm quite qualified. I'm also a recovering alcoholic. I stand to you before you today, 440 days from the liquor. And I can say that this card issued by the state of Mississippi makes it worth my drive every single time to go to a legal, accessible dispensary. And I'm telling you, I don't know how I can make it day in and day out without tinctures, medicated lotions, smokable products, vaporizers, edibles, you name it, I use it. And I have seen nothing but benefits from my life. So thank you for the space. Thank you for the time. And thank you for the concerns. And thank you for the psychiatrist that's also doing some crazy work. But since I've gotten this card, 90+% of my days have been alcohol free. And I do want to state an obvious fact. There has been 0 documented cases of overdoses or deaths from cannabis, no matter how reckless the consumption is. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, and thank you for coming to share with us that today. The committee has heard a lot of testimony, a lot of both some personal, some statistical, a lot of it chemical, and we have all gathered a lot of information, and we look forward to making some decisions about what we are as one piece of the puzzle. Obviously, it's two chambers. We've got a Senate chamber and a House chamber. We have a governor and an executive branch that looks at these things. So we are looking for ways we can put together all the information we've heard in a compassionate way, in a wise way. Wisdom, justice, and moderation, we all know is on our pens as well as on our hearts for how we want to approach this in a compassionate manner. And so we look forward to doing that as we deliberate further and come up with some recommendations to at least our one chamber so we can make some decisions along that way and incorporate a lot of what we've heard. We do have records of the different testimonies, and we appreciate those who've given us paperwork, which we keep in our files that we actually review because it's helpful. And we have a good bit from today too. So I just want to assure everyone we appreciate your efforts here. We will look for ways to move forward with wisdom and moderation. But thank you all for attending today. I think that will end our final meeting. Thank you.
Did you know what's in a name that Robin Fowler? If you change the O to a G, it's bring flower. If you change all the words around, the letters, like alphabet soup.
There is an anagram or whatever they call it. Yes.
It's a sign from God. Are we going to have the 5th meeting about flower?
Are we going to, which flower? Flower from Woodstock? Flower from the Woodstock era or Woodstock, Georgia? Or
the flower from God, because...
Thank you so much for watching. Congratulations, you made it to the end. If you'd like to support this channel, then please consider checking out this product that is in the comments. This is a product I very much believe in, and I'm an affiliate to it. So if people buy from my store, then you can help to support me and the time I put into these things. The Hemp Revival and my organization, the Hemp Economic Revival Organization, and there is a pain relieving gel, which is absolutely incredible, especially when used in tandem with some CBD products, I must say. We have a donation button if you just want to donate. And if you really love this product, then there's an opportunity for you to become an affiliate as well and be my coworker. Let's see what happens with session. Brace yourselves. I think it's going to be a unicorn year, as some have said, because we've got the governor race going on, and so we might need to push some legislation through. It is also FIFA year. We've got a great economic opportunity with that, as long as we can assure that there's enough education so we keep everyone safe. What does that mean? Some people think safety is prohibition because these products are too available to children. Me, growing up since I was a kid, and almost everyone besides me smoking weed, I don't think it'll ever be an issue for children to get a hand on products, because the prohibition was even more when I was growing up. At least it was just flour. It wasn't anything synthetic back then. So it was actually safer, which is why we need to bring back the flour. Some people see the safety issue as people are being arrested and thrown into jail and traumatized for flour. And that is causing so much pain and suffering, and that bleeds into society, because you're taking people's parents away, you're taking people's children away, you're causing not only pain but death. So really think it through, write to your legislators, tell them how you feel. If you think this plant should be freed, please make your voice as loud as possible. See you next time. Stay tuned for a bunch of little shorts from these videos. Thanks everyone for watching them. It really helps the algorithms and the mass consciousness get on some kind of conscious wavelength. See you next time.
I make an outstanding agreement to honor and respect cannabis as a plant for food, free to be planted, harvested and processed by all. I break any past contract known or unbeknownst to me that has taken away my freedoms and security. By but not limited to being punished, shamed, lied to, neglected, shocked, blocked, or manipulated in regards to my personal relationship with and awareness of the cannabis plant. I am committed to spreading